Well, at least it washed all the dirt and sand and dust off the Subaru from our trip to Ojito Wilderness. Well, hey there everybody, welcome to the front porch on a windy afternoon. This is Joe, and well, I'm out here smoking a cigar. I have a cup of AeroPress coffee. Good stuff. Well, I had a fun time yesterday when I went out to the Ojito Wilderness. You guys might remember that video, to shoot some kind of what I'm calling B-roll footage of me sitting on a portable table with a typewriter, a manual typewriter, out in the desert. That footage is kind of cool. I've been thinking about doing that for a long time, as I indicated in that video, and I'm going to use that footage for different purposes in the future. But it was fun just to get out in the open spaces and get out of town a little bit, and I enjoyed that a lot. Well, I was thinking over the last week or so about doing a video about camcorders. You might remember camcorders, these little handheld jobbies with a flip-out screen, and all they do basically is shoot video. Many people nowadays who are making YouTube videos are using still cameras that are also equipped to shoot video. These are either digital SLRs or mirrorless cameras, and I happen to use Panasonic Lumix Micro Four Thirds digital cameras mainly for shooting video. But I've been interested recently in trying to find a little more portable, mobile, lightweight solution for video. And I originally thought that maybe I want to get one of those action cameras like a GoPro, but I didn't want to spend the money on a GoPro because I thought they're kind of overpriced, I think, for what you get. What I did is I eventually, like a week or two ago, I went down to my local electronics place and ended up buying this little Canon camcorder. And I had kind of forgotten all about camcorders in a sense because, well, I was well familiar with camcorders from having, if you go as far back as, let's say, the 1980s, I was a factory-trained camcorder technician by Sony. I was trained on their Video 8 and High 8 camcorders, but it's been decades since I fixed one of those. But I'm well familiar with the technology of them and the form factor and the features. But these little camcorders nowadays are much smaller because they don't have a tape deck mechanism in them. I picked up this little Canon camcorder, and that's what I'm shooting with right now. And my table that we have, this little tabletop tripod set on the table, is vibrating because the umbrella is being buffeted by the wind, so that's why the camera is kind of jiggling. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about camcorders today. This is the little camcorder right here. This is a Canon Vixia HFR800, and it's kind of a nice little machine. The thing that I was immediately impressed about was the size of it is kind of, and the shape of it, it's kind of like a little, about the size of a small can of Red Bull or one of those drinks. It has a classic camcorder kind of configuration. There's a hand strap on the right side. There's a rocker switch for your zoom in and out. There is a manual internal lens cap system, little shutter for the lens, right? And a flip out screen, and as soon as you flip the screen out, the camera, you can set it to turn on, and the screen flips around 270 degrees like this, right? It is a dedicated video camera. It is not like the mirrorless cameras like what we're shooting with right now, where it is essentially a still camera kind of form factor that also shoots video. No, this is pretty much a dedicated video camera, and it has that classic configuration of a camcorder, which has been evolved since, let's say, the 1980s even, right? This whole form factor has been kind of developed over the years, but it's a really compact, lightweight little device that has a 37 power optical zoom, which is really pretty incredible. I haven't actually calculated it, but the wide angle on the lens at its widest angle of view, it's a little bit not quite as wide as a 28 millimeter equivalent in 35 millimeter terms. It's probably more like a 35, but it goes all the way out to 37 times that. It's really a high degree of magnification. The camera has really great handling and ergonomics. I really like holding it with my left hand like this, looking down on the screen, and then operating the shutter button on my right hand, kind of looking down like that. It's a really very ergonomic and comfortable position, but also for shooting selfie video, just flipping the screen around, what I notice about it is, first of all, the screen is directly next to the taking lens, and it's up front near the front of the lens, so you can concentrate your gaze back and forth on both, and it doesn't look like you're looking off camera. Whereas with the mirrorless camera that I'm shooting with right now, for instance this one, the taking lens is set back, recessed from the camera's lens. It flips off the back of the body, and then it's more further outboard from the lens, so you really do have to look off axis to see it. But anyway, this Canon is a nice little camera for about $200 or $220 is what they run. It is not the same degree of quality of video that you're going to get from a $600 or $700 mirrorless camera like what I'm shooting with here. It is a $200 camera, and you kind of get what you pay for. But I think as a second camera, what you might call a B-roll camera, or maybe a better term is just a mobile camera that you can take out and about with you, it's a really great camera because it has such a wide focal length ratio on the zoom. It shoots 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and very lightweight, and has an incredibly nice ergonomics as a camcorder, better than a still camera. I really have to admit. I think where the little Canon has limitations is really in its software and its programming. You have things like you have autofocus, and you also have manual focus adjustments. Actually, the face tracking on the autofocus works really well. I think the weakest part of the system is that when you want to, I think it's the white balance, actually. You have an auto white balance feature, but the auto white balance in the auto mode doesn't really do a great job. It just doesn't render flesh tones very good. And there is a manual white balance, and I've been white balancing it on a white little lens cap thingy, but it still looks different than like this camera, the Lumix G7. It doesn't quite look the same, so it doesn't do as good of a job on white balance. The colors aren't quite as accurate. However, because the sensor on this camera is so small in comparison to like Micro Four Thirds or bigger sensored cameras, you get a really wide depth of focus, and it has what I would call that classic camcorder look to the video. You can see, for instance, on this video shooting with a mirrorless digital camera, the background, like this little back here, is slightly out of focus. My face is in focus. Whereas when you're doing the same shot from this Canon camera, which we'll go ahead and do, the same shot with this Canon camera, pretty much my face and the background are going to be pretty equivalently in focus, just because the way the sensor is so much smaller and it has so much wider depth of focus because of the smaller sensor size. So that is one drawback to having a small sensored camera. It doesn't mean, however, that it's bad. It just means that it has more of that traditional video look to it, rather than what you might expect from a more full-featured camera. The most important feature of this Canon camcorder is this right here. This is the external mic jack. And that is the main reason, one of the main reasons I got this camera in place of an action camera is, yeah, it's a little bit bigger in size than an action camera, but it has an external mic jack and a really long zoom ratio on the lens, and it just offers more for the money. But having an external mic jack means you can plug in an external mic. Now, I've tried both an external mic mounted on an L bracket, like my video mic that has the dead cat wind muff, and now I'm trying out a lav mic that is self-powered. This is a self-powered lav mic. This mic jack does not supply phantom power. You have to have a mic that's self-powered. But I really think it's a great solution for selfie kind of shooting and run and gun shooting, vlogging, where you're pretty much next to the camera and you're talking to the camera all the time. Having a lav mic makes a lot of sense just in terms of getting the microphone close to you all the time. But I really like this setup here. The lightweight and ergonomics of the camera works really well. There are adjustable mic levels on the software in the camera, so that works really well too. So the screen has a number of features, and it is a touch screen. You have basically this P button up on the upper left. You can select between various shooting modes. I usually select either P mode or this highlight priority mode, which is the sparkly one right there. The highlight priority mode works pretty well in controlling the brightness of highlights, but other than that, I would usually use the P mode as the primary shooting mode that I like to use. And then if you get to the home button right here, this takes you to all the different settings. And for instance, if you go to the tools setting, there's a bunch of different menus and tabs where you can control a lot of different features on the camera. And it's pretty good that way. I think the menu system on this camera is a lot simpler than a full-featured digital camera, stills camera, because it's primarily just a video camera. So as I said earlier, the main limitation is not only is the white balance not as accurate as a more expensive camera, but if you power the camera off, you will lose your. If you calibrated your white balance to a custom white balance setting with a gray or white card or piece of plastic, once you turn the camera off and turn it back on, you're going to lose that calibrated setting. So you'll have to do it all over again. This is one reason I'm using this little piece of plastic. This is a little diffuser that came with a lomography flash, but it's neutral white colored and it works pretty good as a calibration method. Well, okay, so I've moved this whole operation indoors because it got so windy and nasty outside. So we're shooting in my office with some window light coming in, and you can see the white balance is different, but hopefully it's a little bit better light. Anyways, so let's talk about camcorders again. And of course I was talking earlier about the form factor of camcorders, and this Canon derives its form factor from the legacy era of camcorders. And here is a legacy camcorder. This is a Sony Hi8. It probably dates from the late 1990s. It has quite a bit bigger size than the Canon, but it has many of the same features and form factors. It's not really cylindrical as much as it is kind of a brick, but it has the classic hand grip on the right side, the lens up front, the zoom rocker switch right here at the index finger, and the swivel screen, right? The swivel's 270 degrees. Now this screen is quite a bit smaller than the one on the Canon, and also you'll notice it's set back from the lens quite a bit. It's about midway on the body. You'll notice another feature this Sony had is an electronic viewfinder. I think it's a black and white. I can't remember if it's black and white or color, but anyways, electronic viewfinder. And of course, because it records on magnetic tape, it has a whole tape transport deck mechanism inside there, which makes it a lot heavier. This is quite a bit heavier of a camera than the little Canon there. But this is the legacy of where that Canon gets its form factor from, is the evolution of the camcorder all the way back into the 1980s. Now, because I've been so interested in the last few weeks and months about making little homemade tabletop tripods, I thought because of the size and weight of this Canon that I would look at maybe exploring once again another tabletop tripod solution, also a solution that might enable it to work pretty good on a mobile environment, going out and about. You know about the Joby GorillaPod kind of tripods, that the flexi bendy legs, all little joints, and I have one of those, but I don't really like the way the leg joints all get all crooked and you have to occasionally straighten them out. I was thinking about this whole camcorder thing also in the context of there was a toy camcorder that came out in the late 1990s, and it was called the Tyco Kids Cam, and I happen to have one right here. This is the little bag it came in, but it came with a tabletop tripod, and I had forgotten all about this tripod, and so this has a little lever that you loosen. It has a primitive kind of a ball head that'll swivel around, and it's a 1/4 20 mount. And this actually works really well on the Canon camcorder, by the way. But what it has is extendable legs that you can pull it out and you can set it down on a table, or you can just retract them and then use it as a grip and carry it around like a little handle. But look at this. It has these two little brackets, and those were originally for wrapping your yellow cord around, the audio-video cord, right, to store it. But since I'm using a lavalier microphone now, I'm trying to use a lav mic with the Canon here as a way of getting better audio outdoors. I figured, hey, I could use this to wrap my cord, because my lav mic has a 16-foot cable, and you have to be able to manage that, so it's only like 3 or 4 feet long or whatever. So I got around yesterday to thinking about, this is a great tripod and I can throw it in my camera bag and use it, but you know, I still want to make one like this, but I want it to be a little bit taller so it works a little bit better for tabletop use, and that's what I've been using today out on the patio, and now today in the office here. I'm using a homemade tripod. So let me switch cameras back to the Panasonic, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so what I had was a monopod, and a monopod that I had a little base, a little leg system, and it has a clamp on it that's removable, and these legs will fold up, but it's rigid enough, and so what I got is a 7/8 inch diameter oak dowel. It's a 12 inches long, and I rigged up this little wooden head. I don't know if you can see this, but I basically mounted the oak dowel in a hole here, and I pinned it and glued it, and now I'm using the Joby GorillaPod ball head, right? And I have a couple of these little cup hooks on the side that I can wrap my microphone cable on now, and it makes for a nice little tabletop tripod. You can remove it from the leg there and just carry it around like a little selfie stick. Well, anyway, that was just an update on my recent B-roll secondary camera acquisition and yet another tripod project for it. Actually, this new little wooden stick tripod works pretty good with the larger Panasonic cameras as well as a tabletop setup, and as I indicated earlier, I'm using the little triangular base to my monopod as a way of supporting it, and I can just stick it in there and clamp it down and call it good, and it works pretty good outside too as a kind of a selfie stick holder. But anyway, that's it for today. More camera gear and tabletop tripods, and we had a good hailstorm yesterday. Until next time, you guys have yourselves a great day.